Has anybody seen the movie The Founder about Ray Kroc, starring Michael Keaton? A very, very good movie, written by Robert Siegel, the guy who also wrote Big Fan and directed Big Fan, which is also a very good movie. So I'm going to do some slight spoilers here. The movie is about how the process by which this itinerant salesman, this guy who'd been on the grind trying to get rich with like Ronco level schemes since World War II, Ray Kroc, finds these brothers who had created a new system for fast food delivery, literally an efficient distribution of labor within a kitchen to vastly increase the output of a restaurant. And the movie is about how he got his brothers to sign over to him to allow him to franchise it, his creation of this franchise model that swept the nation, and then his eventual consumption of the brothers. He ends up buying the brothers out of their control of the company, taking away their restaurant that they had created, where the first McDonald's, so that they had to call it something else, and then he put up a McDonald's next to it and ran it out of business. Just destroyed these guys who had actually created the thing. And that's the story, and it's about and Michael Keaton plays the guy. So, the McDonald brothers and Ray Kroc, these characters are all what we would call capitalists, right? By the time Kroc is like is fighting them, by the time Kroc is exercising control of the company, these are all capitalists. But they do not share material interests, even though they are the same class, even though they're part of the same project. The McDonald brothers, in a sequence that's one of my favorite scenes in recent movies, and something that honestly they could teach in. I'm not surprised that the Prager University hasn't used this thing as a paean to the glories of capitalism. Like, this is a story that is like would be in any textbook that wants to talk about the possibility of the American dream, which is that you can, through your own ability, will, gumption, and vision and creativity, you are able to write your will in the world. That is the American dream. Writing your will in the world is the dream of socialism too, but it is a collective dream. We don't have that. We have the individual dream. That is our material understanding, is the individual dream. And it is depicted in this thing where the brothers, played by Nick Offerman and John Carroll Lynch, a.k.a. Zodiac, as Maurice Mac McDonald. Ray Kroc sees the restaurant, is blown away by it, sees their system, takes them to dinner, and wants to hear the story. And they tell it. And you can tell right away that they've been waiting to tell this story to somebody. They're incredibly proud of it. They tell it with theatrical panache. John Carroll Lynch is just like absolutely hamming it up in a very, very credible way. Nick Offerman is like doing this very bemused, understated thing. They're clearly just having a ball because they did this thing and they want someone to know about it. And they tell the story about how these guys came from New Hampshire to LA to be in movies. And I think that's incredibly important. These guys didn't want to be capitalists. They wanted to be artists. They had the artist spirit. Their first instinct was not to start a business. It was to get into the dream factory. Maybe you start as a grip and make your way up to a director, or you get to be a stuntman, or maybe you get to be cast as like one of those guys in a 50s movie like The Comic Relief who has his pants all the way up to here and like is always falling in troughs. And then they were like extras, they were stuntmen, they washed out of the thing. Then they tried to do a movie theater. They wanted to do a movie theater. If they couldn't be in the movies, they wanted to be around the movies. These are people who did not want their material interests. Their understanding of their interests was not material acquisition over everything. They wanted something else, something that could only be achieved socially through expression and coordination with others. And then the movie theater was killed by the Depression. And then they had to find something to do, so they were at a restaurant, and then they applied their artistic temperaments to the restaurant. And it was literally the bringing together of these two artistic temperaments. This guy who wanted to create a machine, a beautiful machine, and this person who wanted to package it and express it, built this thing. And there's the montage of them sketching out the kitchen on a tennis court and having people go around. There's one shot where Nick Offerman is literally standing over these people, coordinating the actions, waving his hands like he's a conductor, going, relish, ketchup. He's literally conducting an orchestra. Ray Kroc hears the story. Now, Ray Kroc has no creative anything. This guy has no desire to be appreciated for his soul, his self-expression. He wants to be recognized as better than somebody else, higher up than somebody else. This is a guy who has spent his whole life trying to get rich, has lived beyond his means, is probably married to a rich woman, goes to a country club with a bunch of rich guys who all look down on him. He is the perfectly aggrieved Nixonian subject. He's a 50-year-old man who's reciting the same spiel about fucking malt machines to disinterested drive-in hosts, and he has nothing left to care about anything other than getting some validation through advancement, through social advancement, power, money, all that stuff. So here's the story, and he just wants to make money out of it. And so once they start the company, the McDonald brothers keep pulling the reins on him, keep saying, no, don't do this. We have values that are transcend money. And he's saying, what are you talking about? I just need to make money. More and more and more. I need money. What are you talking about? And these are both people on the same class position who share, if you wanted to use one word for it, of the same material interest, but have different material interests as they understand them, because they're different people who had different experiences. And that is true in every strata of society at every given moment in time. Both of those guys are Republicans. Both of those guys are happy to exploit labor for their vision, are happy to use the capitalist system to their benefit, but towards different ends, towards a more social end and towards a personal acquisitive end. And the thing about capitalism is that it is a magnet that pulls people like Ray Kroc up and pulls people like the McDonald brothers down.
I want to take the future. I want to win. And you don't get there by being some aw shucks nice guy sap. There's no place in business for people like that.
Because the system rewards the person who is most interested in making money. By definition. Because that's what the system does. It points like a North Star those within a firmament who are most aware of their self-interest as narrow. Who are most blind to abstract notions of value. To socially stored expressions of value. So they have different material interests. And so over time, Ray Kroc, what do you know? He gets the upper hand on the McDonald's boys. Even though they had an ironclad contract, he's able to get together with another guy who tells him, hey, you should have these guys be buying the land from you. And then if you control the land, your leverage changes. He didn't think of that. But he uses it to pry one over and to dominate the McDonald's boys. And to take it from them. And to impoverish them. He runs them out of business. Even though they're both capitalists with the same material interests. Because his interests are more narrow, and because they are, he's willing to do things the McDonald's brothers aren't. And it means that eventually his power is socially rewarded enough that he's able to win. Because who cares what the law says? The reality is, if he's got more liquidity, more access to capital than they do, then there is no legal question that he won't win, because he can wait them out.
We will sue you whatever it takes.
And you probably win. But you can't afford to sue me. I bury you in court costs alone.
Yeah, sue me. I will drag it out, and I have more money than you. Because he's willing to do things they won't. Because he's willing to cut corners they won't. He's willing to ignore values that transcend money they won't. And then that happens at every level of the economy. Over and over and over again, that process happens. So that now we have reached, it's now 80 years later? Almost 100 years later. And now the McDonald's are gone. Everybody is Ray Kroc. The McDonald's have been driven out of the system, pulped out. Those artistic talents They either lie dormant, they are destroyed, or somebody makes it on the margins of society, or takes precarious labor, falls out of power. It's the bad driving out the good, exactly. And it's all bad now. There's only Ray Kroc. There are still people doing art. There's still people doing entrepreneurship. They're still doing things that have that associated historic relationship to self-expression or autonomy, but they are now crabbed and broken and small, and everyone who pursues them has compromised so much that they don't get the pleasures that used to be out of it. And so they have to reconsider their self-interests more narrowly, because there's no other place to get validated than narrow self-pleasure, because there's no other pleasures to be had.
Business is war. It's dog eat dog, rat eat rat. If my competitor were drowning, I'd walk over and I'd put a hose right in his mouth.
Won't the Ray Krocs eventually turn on each other, though? I mean, that's what we have right now. Right now, like in a larger sense, the battle between the Republicans and the Democrats, between those two capital and social formations, is a battle between the people who are in the McDonald's brothers positions, not in terms of like ingenuity and brilliance or anything, but local concentrations of capital, are at war with the Ray Krocs, only everybody is Ray Kroc. The only thing that still exists is the social distinction, if you know what I mean. Because they still do have different understandings of their material interest, but they are no longer being defined by this conflict over values, because the values have desiccated and fallen away. They're now just the forms of the values. They're just the shadows left by the nuclear incineration of the values. It's private equity versus like the local tire store conglomerate or restaurant franchisee. Like those type of guys are the actual social engine in terms of the people who made up the voters, the candidates, the ideology, provide the money for the conservative counterreaction that started in the 50s. It was those aggrieved guys, not the McDonald's brothers who had a song in their heart. It's the post-defeated McDonald's brothers. It's the ones who never had anything in the first place. The ones who were like local, just power seekers, but who were local in their power.
Persistence. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence.
One of the great things about Kroc as a character as depicted in the film is that, in contrast to the incredibly inventive, proud, stolid McDonald brothers, Kroc learns nothing, has no connection to anything. His desire is totally unmoored from any enjoyment beyond self-validation. It's totally arid. At the beginning of the movie, while he's still trying to pep himself up to be a milkshake salesman, he's listening to this Dale Carnegie tape, or this Dale Carnegie record on a portable player in his hotel room. And it's just this spiel about how persistence is the key to success. And he's repeating it, and he's repeating it. And then he goes through this whole thing where he gets the McDonald's brothers and he swindles them out of it. He takes credit for it. He calls his first franchise McDonald's #1. He starts referring to himself as the founder. He buys their name from them because it's clean and crisp and American and you can make it into anything. And at the end of the movie, he's giving a speech before Ronald Reagan when he was governor of California, and it's like recapitulating everything that happened. And he's practicing the speech in the front of the mirror, and it's just the fucking Dale Carnegie record. It's just the same thing he's been listening to for 40 years. Just a hollow. All he can do is echo this voice saying, grind, persist, because it's all that's ever animated him. And nothing has been accumulated, nothing has been learned. And he spends the whole time succeeding because of the efforts of harder working or more creatively minded collaborators who come up with things at every point that he then takes credit for because he's the guy with the money. So I think that's another reason that's a great movie, because not only does it show you how capitalism develops, it shows you what capitalism does to people, and more importantly, how The kind of people who thrive in it remake us in their image through their ability to persist like a fucking fungus, like a bacteria. And it can only be carried out by hollow people. And they demonstrate that Kroc is completely hollow.